Hey there, Internet, and welcome to episode 60 of Funny Book Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorTalk.com. I am your host, James Ferguson. This week's guest is Jen Vaughn, the writer of Goosebumps Download and Die from IDW Publishing. I had previously spoken with Chris Fenoglio, the artist of the last Goosebumps series. This one is an entirely new tale, and it's off to a pretty great start. It's a fun, all-ages story that works for adults and kids alike. If you've listened to this show, you'll know how much of an influence Goosebumps is on an entire generation of horror creators, so I'm excited to see it return and in comic book form. Jen can be found online on Twitter as @thejenya, that's Jenya. The first issue of Goosebumps Download and Die is available now at your local comic shop and digitally through Comixology and Amazon Kindle. That is it for the introduction this week. Now let's get into this episode of Funny Book Splatter with my guest, Jen Vaughn. All right, so again, the cheesy interview question to start us off is, if you had to pitch Goosebumps Download and Die to someone, whether it's someone on a convention floor or what have you, how would you describe the book to them?
I would say that Goosebumps Download and Die is about a young girl who is sent a haunted phone. Pretty basic. Not basic, but fun.
Yeah, but it gets to the point, I guess. Like we've had haunted houses, we've had haunted museums and all this other stuff. Like, it's about time we have a haunted phone too.
Yeah, haunted technology is probably one of my favorite, sub-tropes of horror, because it's like the things we use every day that we think, user error might be the problem. It's like, no, there's actually like a demon inside them or something.
Yeah, gremlins or what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now is like a perfect time for it, considering like how much we're attached to to phones in general, let alone kids. Like, it's just like to have an idea of like there's something demonic going on inside it is a really creepy thought.
Especially with the news every day, where apparently we are being watched. It's great. It's
It's a very timely book then in that case. and it's an all ages title, so it all just kind of comes together there.
Yeah. And I should say that my the creative team is amazing. It's drawn by Michelle Wong, colored by Trina Tree Farrell, and the lettering is by Krista Mesmer, edited by Sarah Gatos at IDW. Amazing team. And then we have a lot of cool variant cover artists too that I got to pick, so I was excited about that.
So is that, you said all the names, but is that an all-female creative team then?
It is. Actually, yeah.
That's awesome. Because this feels like a very inclusive story as well. At least judging from the first issue. So I'm really happy to see that it's like, yes, not only can you do it, but you guys can do it really well. It's not a bunch of old white dudes that are making these kind of stories anymore.
I used to read a bunch of old white dude horror comics, though.
Yeah. Well, that's
EC stuff.
They started somewhere, but now it's like everyone can make horror books now. It's and comics in general, for that matter. So, but yeah, this is a really inclusive kind of story. But and I love the idea of it. You kind of get to these are kids first and foremost, and they have kid problems, and it's here's a new friend, and this girl's stealing my current friend, and it's you have this weird kind of friendship triangle going on there, and it's and then also you throw it, you get used to all these characters, you get acquainted with them, and then you throw in this idea of the haunted phone that is just it starts. I like how it starts really kind of subtly of that looks weird, and then it's oh, that looks really weird. All right, I think we're seeing what's happening here, but but the hauntings take the form of such bizarre things, a ghost gets Snapchat kind of thing, and it's oh, all right. I guess that's what would happen if a ghost got an iPhone and yeah, all right. What are we gonna do? We're gonna put some demonic filters on your pictures. That'll be crazy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's got the title Goosebumps on it, so people know that they're in for a scary ride. But yeah, it definitely had to start somewhere. It wasn't just we're here to spook you. It's here's a real story with real people, and then now let's tear them apart. So
yeah, but again, an all ages point. You're not ripping someone's head off to do this, but it's still good kind of spooky factor, just enough to scare you out without giving you nightmares.
You'd be surprised the licensors let you get away with.
Well, now I'm curious as to where you're was there anything that was too far that no, it's fine if you rip that kid's head off, but not that one. We draw the line at 2 beheadings.
I was asked to put less puke in it, so but there is some puke, so because it's also inherently funny, I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of like all your problems and your anxieties made manifest outside your body. So
I think that there is a fair amount of puke actually. Like, and it's funny. Like, I'm scrolling through the book again, and I just got to that page, and I was like, oh, that is actually a good amount of puke. Like, I'm curious. I'm like, where else was it? So, I'm sorry to ask this, but like, total cheesy interview question. Like, being that you're writing a Goosebumps book, was that something you were into growing up?
Yes, I super loved reading Goosebumps as a kid. I moved every summer, so libraries and bookstores were kind of a touchstone for me. And between the spines of Goosebumps and Garfield books, it's like I always knew where I could find some. And I remember, sitting, in Barnes and Noble at the time, like reading the first 10 pages and being like, I have to get this next one, or, going on and off with the neighbor kid just to see, like, you buy the next one and then we could both read it. And I definitely reread some just to get a sense of the flavor. And I had forgotten how many chapters there are. There's like 80 chapters a book because R.L. Stine liked to make the ends of each chapter like a cliffhanger. Like a crazy amount. It was like, and then they saw a shark coming after them. Page turn, chapter 15. It was a dolphin. And it was like, oh, okay. Like, it's like preying on your snap judgments, which was something I, tried to do in the comic, but it's, you can't have that many cliffhangers without people being like, what is happening? Am I on like a drug haze? So
yeah, I mean, I think in that case, like, you could play on the idea of like kids and their interpretation for stuff. Like, if you see a fin out there in the water, like, immediately the kid's gonna be, that's totally a shark, and it's a giant shark and it's gonna eat everybody. It's like, no, that is a dolphin. Okay, all right, yeah, upon closer examination. So I think that kind of works in that case. But you're right, like, pacing would be really weird if, like, every page turn you're like, oh my god, what is that? Oh, no, it's not. Oh my, all right, like, all right, just like, it's like The Boy Who Cried Wolf by that point. Like, all right, we get it. All right, there's some spooky stuff going on. We can take a moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about was the names for some of, like, the apps. I think, like, well, just, I guess Dead Room was, like, the main one. Like, that kind of hits the nail on the head to an extent of, like, maybe that's a little weird. On the phone, or is that like the game that they play together?
So Dead Room is the name of the photo app, so it's kind of like a play on Dark Room, where you back in ye olden days, people would develop photos in a dark room. So Dead Room kind of being like, nothing's alive until it's processed through our filters. So the game the main character Mitra starts playing on her phone is called Creeps. Okay. So which people that have read old Goosebumps might recognize, the names of an old villain. But I definitely wanted to put in some mobile game stuff because it's fun and we all play them basically. Like, everyone's a gamer now practically on some level. And I'd also worked in mobile games, so I was just like, well, what's a fun way to design a game into this comic?
Cool. So you're bringing in your professional life into your other professional life.
Absolutely. Yes. And I had worked in like Plants vs. Zombies and Nicki Minaj, the Empire game. So I was like, it was kind of like, okay, this is pretty easy to do. So, and then Michelle and Trina like made it look so good. There's a little panel of one of the creeps being hit by a car, and it makes me laugh every time I see it. So,
you're working with the artists as well. Like, what I'm curious is, like, so you're also an artist. So, like, how do you come at a story like this as the writer? Like, you have a unique way of looking at it that is, because you are a writer and an artist, I guess. So, like, do you write in full script? Do you kind of, like, do you sketch anything out? How do you approach a book like this?
As far as the art goes, I left a lot of that to Michelle Wong. Aside from the character creation, like, I'd sent her, like, full descriptions of them, and then some, sort of like, little, I told her, morgues, as they're called, like, picture files of, like, clothes they might wear, and, like, color schemes. Cause I wanted them all to work, together, but separately, also. So, Kira, is always the black best friend is always wearing like pinks and like not navy, excuse me, like army greens and denim, and then and Flips is always wearing like white shirt, like graphic designs and white shirts and like, you know, jeans, so stuff like that. I didn't really do any sketching aside from all the variant covers. Sarah, our editor, I guess in an attempt to keep me interested, which was not a problem on my end, but she'd always ask me for concepts, and then, you know, to see people like turn them into like something better was super fun. I will say the cover for the second book, by Michelle, that one was definitely all her, because she was just like, you know, one of the scariest scenes for me was Jurassic Park when the raptors are like coming in the kitchen. So it's definitely like these creep lizards are like hanging out in the computer lab, and the girls are all hiding under a desk, and it's a little reminiscent of that cool scene in that adventure film.
I mean, there's a place in horror for something like Jurassic Park. That's fine. People are afraid of dinosaurs.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a very rational fear, right? Like to go with the demon, the demon phone.
You know, you can never be too careful. Yeah. It could be good to be afraid of them as well. I think the one like detail that I really loved was like there's a shot of the battery I guess level of the phone, and it's full of blood, and it's like the blood is like moving around. It looks like that's like such like a nice little detail to it that it's like, oh yeah, like we should know better that this is totally a demonic phone. Like that should be a tip off here that there's something wrong with this phone.
Yes, thank you. I did write that in the script. Sorry, I feel like a jerk saying that. But Michelle, like I feel like anytime I wrote something, she knew exactly what I was thinking. Like I described stuff, but it was like, she like was tapped into me. Maybe she's like haunting me, but in like, you know, a good way to make a great comic.
I guess, look, there's different layers of hauntings, and that's one of them. I mean, that might border on like stalking to an extent, because it's like, oh yeah, no, I bugged your house so we can collaborate better. Like,
yeah, no, we probably shouldn't joke about that.
Just in case they're listening. Now, what was I gonna say? You mentioned like horror in general. Like you have some other experience in horror, with Deadwater, which you're kind enough to send over to me as well. Which was that like hit like a punch to the gut when like everything kind of came together. Like really cool setup there of like, all right, I'm like, this is going one way, this is really sweet, and then it was like, oh no, this is something entirely different. Like this is really what's going on. Like that was a terrifying stuff. So, but I've seen from your work, from the handful of things I was able to look up before we talked, like you've kind of touched upon seemingly a little bit of everything. So you have some work with like other kids stuff and some more like adventure-y kind of stuff. What is it about horror that kind of brought you into a book like this, aside from, I guess, the fact that Goosebumps was a constant companion of your childhood?
Yeah, horror, I think, is one of the hardest things to do in comics, and that's why it's so enticing. If you think about all the other mediums in which you can play with horror, like horror podcasts are doing, or to me at least, doing crazy well, because they take something, ambient noise, talking in your ear. So they're literally like in your head, and they create visions for you in your imagination to make the worst things possible on Earth. In that way, it's kind of like they are more powerful than any movie. But then they're utilizing words in a way that books, not utilizing words, sorry, they're utilizing, like music and, sound in a way that books cannot. Whereas in comics, it's like not only do you not have like the audio factor, but you also have pacing and people who are able to flip to the very end and be like, oh, okay, now that I know what's happening at the end, I can like try to suss out what's happening in the middle,
really
like to see the signs.
Really do that?
I don't know if people do that with comics. I've seen so many people flip to the last page of a book and be like, all right, and now I'm going to detective it out. And I'm like, I mean, to each their own, but I'd rather reread a book, and then be a mystery at least, and then, try to figure it out on my own. But it was, horror is, I don't know, between horror fiction and then like just drinking all the true crime in I can. And I don't know if that's a sign of the times or just because like as a woman, there's like, there's a certain like relatability, like, walking alone at night in the city, like always having your key like in between your fingers. It's like, there's something that it's like, it's not the thrill, but it's like a known adrenaline. And so it's something that maybe I know I seek in my extracurricular or, my reading time to emulate, or at least, even though it's like a safe space. I'm like, I'm reading at home or watching a movie or, safer.
Yeah.
Can't say for sure. My house, again, might be haunted. So, yeah, I definitely, there's a lot of true crime and horror being consumed in my home.
What are you consuming now? You mentioned horror podcasts. Are there particulars that you're listening to now that you're into?
Oh yeah, the No Sleep podcast. It's a anthology series. Is pretty good. The Black Tapes, King Falls AM. There's a lot of good ones. And King Falls, like they operate sort of from where I come from, where it's like there's a lot of humor injected too, because that way it sort of juxtaposes the horror. Like you can, you have downtime from it. Your heart gets to recalibrate, and then boom, it's back up. Pumping in your throat and whatnot. So that's. Yeah, sorry, I'm probably not saying it in like the most eloquent way.
Get it. You're getting the point across perfectly. I'm not familiar with No Sleep yet, but I've listened to Black Tapes. I think I listened to the first season of Black Tapes. I think like what threw me a bit was like I think that was the first scripted podcast I listened to. So at times I'm like like this it may not have worked as well for me because like I'm like, all right, you sound a little stilted or like you're figuring things out. Like I can tell you're reading a script, whereas like, the guy from Lore, like, yeah, he's reading a script too, but it's more of like, he's telling me a story versus this is like, you're trying to act out the story. It just comes across a little funny sometimes.
Yeah. No, I like the acting. I don't mind it. I just think it's funny because also Black Tapes is based in Seattle, but they're clearly Canadian. So, I mean, we're only 3 hours away from the border, but I'm like, okay, guys, like, I guess Seattle's just got that spookiness that attracts all the murderers, plus all the body dumping grounds in the area too. I guess
those good old Seattle body dumping grounds.
The BDGs are rich and ripe here.
Makes for some excellent fertilizer.
Yeah. I super want to make a horror podcast, but I feel like it's also, I don't know, it's you have to have all the right elements and the right actors. So instead I just kind of do a live D&D podcast at the moment because it's a little bit less prep work, or I can spend more time doing art for it instead of writing.
You do art for the podcast as well? Is that like your I guess cover art or something, or how does that work?
Yeah. We have it's called D20 Dames, and our writer Kat Kruger /DM, she's written a bunch of original adventures, so I've been doing covers for those, and then occasionally just like favorite scenes from the episodes, kind of like, bring in new people. So, which I guess, in its own way, that's D&D can also like, it treads into the horror territory too. Like, I mean, you're walking into like dungeons full of like old skeletons and sometimes they move, Yeah.
Like, I mean, like the monsters in general, like that. And that's one of the things I really love about this genre is that it's so versatile. There's so much variety in it that you can have something like Goosebumps, and then you can have a D&D kind of story. You can have, Friday the 13th, and it's like everything in between for it makes for some fun storytelling.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite, horror trope or like, area?
It's weird. Like I've grown to really appreciate the genre for reviewing comics so much, but like I've been focused solely on comics for so long that like I have to venture out a little bit more and get more acquainted with horror movies again. But like I found the ones that like I'm kind of over jump scares. Like all right, like that's it. Right. Like all right, you're gonna get me. That's like a short-term payoff. Whereas like I watched I always get them confused, but Sinister and Insidious. I know. I don't know why. I think all this kind of came out around the same time, and I can't remember which one it was. I think it's
the title treatment with the eyes and stuff.
I think it was the one with Ethan Hawke. So I want to say that was...
That's Sinister.
That movie I watched, like, during the day in my basement, but, like, so the lights were off, and, like, it was, like, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and, like, the movie ended, and I'm like, well, I gotta go walk around in the sunlight for, like, just 5 minutes, like, just to, like, make sure, like, everything's okay, I could see all the exits, like, we're okay here, because, like, it's stuck with me, this idea of, like, something's in your house, and you can't do anything. But then again, like, with that movie, like, I think that's the one at the very end, like, the very, very end, there's a jump scare, and I'm like, man, like, F you, man, like, you got, like, you did not, like, alright, you earned the scares, I was freaked out about this whole movie, and then at the very end, you're just like, hey man, screw you, we still got you, you're scared, we're gonna scare you again, you might have to check your underpants a little bit, it's like,
I mean, but here you are talking about it years later, so I feel like they're like, listen, we're only gonna do it once, but we're gonna make it count.
So in that case, like, I'll let it slide, but I'm like, but that was a movie, like, it stuck with me for a while, like, that kind of, like, getting into your skin, this, like, feeling of just dread, and, like, something bad is gonna happen, and I don't know if that's, like, a trope so much as just, like, a general feeling, but that kind of, like, getting under your skin feeling it tends to stick with you a lot longer, and then just, like, like, alright, like, anyone could do that, like, I did that to my 5-year-old the other day, and I'm like, oh, great, now I made him cry, like, alright, like, now I'm a horrible person. So, I think there's like more nuance to it than there once was, if that made any sense.
If I recall, they both have some, like, I don't remember Sinister, honestly, but I think there's both, like, it's like the home is no longer safe type thing, like, yeah, which even outside of, like, the haunted house genre itself, it's like home invasion of some kind, like that first season of American Horror Story. It's like someone came into their home, like, unasked in every episode, and even if it was just like a neighbor, a creepy neighbor, it was still, like, off-putting because it's your home, like, the doors are locked, how did they get it, like, stuff like that. And I think that's that's one of the great tenets. It's like they put you at ease, or at ill ease very early on. Excuse me.
Yeah, that is a, like, I mean, home invasion is one thing, but just the idea that your home is no longer safe is a really unsettling feeling, because you're right, that's the home base. Like, even like, going back to being as a kid, and it's like, oh, if I'm under the covers, then monster can't get to me, because that's the safe zone, that's the barrier. But then when you break that down, and it's like, someone's in here, I remember getting freaked out as a kid of, like, thinking I heard stuff, but it was just like the house settling. And it's like, no, it's just like normal noises, but I'm like immediately going back to, like, the latest episode of America's Most Wanted, thinking that there's some guy escaped and is now decided of all the houses in the neighborhood to come, like, this deep into the neighborhood and get into my house for some reason.
Everyone's got to sleep at some point, so it's definitely an interesting aspect. I've been a big fan of like flora and fauna fighting against you in a way, or like I don't know. I keep thinking of, and I don't even know if it's a horror, but like Tremors, man. Like, I grew up with that movie or that series. Yeah, and it's because it's like, it like takes place mostly in like the blinding sun of the desert, but it's still like the ground isn't safe. Oh, well, we'll just avoid the ground. What? No, you can't.
How,
like,
how are you gonna go anywhere?
Yeah, and even I think it was called Burrowers. It was like the first 2/3 of that movie was good, and then the last third was not good. But it was about, like, these things that come from under the ground and take people. So it's like, they would take people out of their sleeping bags, It was just like, oh, it's like, and it was like a pioneer colonial time in the U.S. So it was kind of like people had to sleep on the ground when they were, like, taking their wagons across or whatever. And, not whatever, when they were trying to do Manifest Destiny and all that stuff. So it was definitely, that sort of stuff, including that Manifest Destiny. I love that comic
so
too.
Good. Like I like how they've developed their characters and stuff too. It's like and then it's just, they can make any monster whatsoever, and it's like, all right, there's a lot going on here. It's all creepy. Let's go with it.
Yeah, no, God, I love that comic. I don't know how long it's gonna go on, but like Matthew Roberts, that artist, like, he could do anything. I feel like he should be, like, drawing 8 more books. But obviously, like, this is like their baby. So
yeah, it's funny how this kind of stuff, like, pops up, and it's like, I feel like that's a really under the radar kind of book too, and it's unfortunate because it's like it is so consistently well done.
Yeah, that in Harrow County too. Like, geez.
Oh my God,
Cullen.
Harrow.
Yeah.
That's ending.
I know.
That's
that
ending,
is
and
ending.
I'm so sad about it. Like, but I'm like, I don't know how they're gonna end a book like that. But it's like, oh my God, like, dude, every issue of this book, it just hits like so hard.
Yeah, no, that's a dream team right there with Tyler and Cullen.
Yeah. Oh my God. But I do want to ask about, well, horror in general. So like, while this certainly dabbles in it and Deadwater plays in it too, like, do you have like I guess more horror books in you that you want to get out there?
Oh, always. Oh, and I guess you say like Deadwater is my Western lesbian horror comic I made last year. Yeah. My friend Kuzak Bailey kind of made a cover, or he made an image, and I was like, I want to draw a comic around that, and so I did.
That's really all that came from, was just like that's a cool image, and you developed something all around it?
Yeah. I kind of bounced some ideas off of him, and then he was just like, do it. So I was like, yep. We actually had like 2 other little horror westerns, but haven't had time to do those, / other horror story or other stories have kind of been more important. So I've got a aquatic horror story, so that I'm working on. So
aquatic horror,
like underwater.
Yeah, like well, already. The shape of water. That anything.
Maybe less romantic.
Creature. Yes. The creature from the Black Lagoon. I feel like that's one of the Universal monsters that didn't quite get his due in the scheme of things. Like, everyone knows werewolf and vampires and the mummy and stuff, but it's like, yeah, what about the fish monster? Like, come on. Like, now's his time. That's it. Yeah. 2018 is the rise of the fish monster.
I'm waiting for Archie to do their Universal monster version of that, since they've got Jughead as the werewolf, Vampironica,
yes.
The zombies of Afterlife with Archie. I'm like, where's the mummy book? Where's the Fishman book? So.
Yeah, see, this sounds like a pitch that we could probably get to them. Like, what do we? I mean, you're working with Archie. You could probably get in there, right?
Come on, guys. Yeah. The number of pitches they have for me, it probably would surpass the pages I've drawn.
But I feel like that's a good thing. Well, especially with the success that they have with those kind of horror titles. Mm-hmm. I honestly wish there were more of them, because like Afterlife and Sabrina kind of like fell along the wayside a bit, but Jughead and Vampironica are hopefully seemingly picking up the slack with some of the stuff that they're doing now.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure Sabrina will be releasing some new stuff soon, probably because they are doing another run, because they are making that TV show. So
yeah, I think it's on Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, Robert Hack, amazing. And
oh my God,
I love that all these artists are really good, too. Like, it's like, that's the thing. It's like they're good and they're cool people too. So I'm like, do more shit.
Yeah, it feels like it's fine. It feels like a more curated kind of collection in that case, mm-hmm. with stuff. So it's like, all right, like we spent time. We're only got a couple of these, so they all got to be really special. And it seems like they're committed to doing that with those creative teams. So whenever they become available, I mean, granted, the writer for Afterlife and Sabrina, Roberto, I've met him, and I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, but he's basically running Riverdale right now. So mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff going on over there. So back to Goosebumps a bit. So it seems like the plan with Goosebumps in general is like these kind of 3-issue series. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of like 3 issues, and then they'll presumably move on to the next story and stuff too. But it sounds like you might be comfortable doing this for like ever, from the sound of things.
I actually know 2 other writers that they've lined up. I don't know if they are going to do anything. So, but I totally want to read the stories that these 2 writers would make. So,
yeah, I mean, since it is an anthology kind of title, I guess it does lend itself to that. And the 3 issues is like a nice kind of like easy entry point, both from a budgetary and from just a length standpoint, for kids to dive into this book and reading in general. So like, I have 2 kids, so the idea of, all right, giving them something to read, and they love comics, mm-hmm. so it's like, okay, like they can read through this and see all the pictures and kind of tell the story back to me to an extent is a fun side of things.
Oh yeah, and I assume more kids are going to get into it once the trade paperback is out. Not to like metagame marketing, but mm-hmm. Kids like to read stuff beginning to end.
Yeah.
So or it's something like My Little Pony. It's like they can take those installments as they come, but something that's like horror based, I feel like they're smart enough to know like boys probably be best all in one sitting, maybe. Or I don't know. Like,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that was it.
But I feel like building in cliffhangers like what you have at the end of the first one, it's like, okay, this is a way to like, it's not quite as many as R.L. Stine might have had, but it's a matter of like you're building it into it. Okay, like this, it gives you that incentive to come back. So I think like the more all ages comics and more quality all ages comics like this one can only help the industry in general, because like you got to get kids reading comics. Like they're not all going to be, because sooner or later the audience that's reading them now is going to die. Right? So it's like you're going to need that next generation to come up and pick up the slack there. And I think there's been like this nice resurgence lately and respect for like the all ages kind of genre that does work like as an adult as well as like, so like I have fond memories of Goosebumps after reading them as a kid, so I can respect and understand what this is going for, and I still really enjoyed the book. And then I could also see how kids will love this because it's speaking to them. They're the main stars of the book. It's not a matter of like, here's a, they go to adults when when they have problems. There are a handful of adults in this book, but they're far from the main characters. It's these kids going through and these problems, both supernatural and just normal, and then they're how they're figuring it out themselves instead of relying on the adults for help.
Yeah, and I think that's the main tenet for a good all ages book, is that there are consequences, and that then the main characters have to face them. Like it, obviously, like all ages means that they might not be like, turned inside out and then have their, their lungs feasted upon, but it means that there are dire consequences. And that's something I think I've tried to put in like most of the all ages work I've done, like the Cartosia Tales, which is like a D&D style anthology. It's like, if you build it up and you take it seriously, like the kids they'll want to read it. Like they're smart. I remember taking books in like with ripped covers so I could read like scary stuff or sexy stuff when I was a kid from the library.
And I feel like kids can sense when something is not genuine. So when it's like, oh yeah, we're going to like pad this, it's like, no, they're going to see right through that. They have like a great bullshit detector. So like even now, like look, my oldest is only 5, and I'm like, I can't really pull a fast one on him. Like he gets it. And I'm like, oh man, like the days of lying to you are just over. Like I can't just be like, I don't know, magic. Like, you're going to see right through that. 'Cause it's like, oh man, I have to like either actually explain it or just like admit that, guess what? Your dad doesn't know everything. Like, far from it.
It's good that you got, something to, like undo your like idea of the cool self. Like the world is seeing you now through your 5-year-old's eyes. Just teasing. Yeah.
It is interesting. But seeing how the kid sees the world is like really, really interesting, because it's like, okay, like I see how you got to that conclusion, but like that isn't like that's not entirely correct. So like here's how this works, and it's really just a cool, experiment almost to see like, oh, okay, I get it. All right, this is what you're doing. Cool. Yeah. But since given the topic of Goosebumps for Download and Die, like, have you changed your behavior at all with using your phone?
Nope. I actually, my previous phone started to die on me, in a weird way where it would, there was some disconnect between the actual touch mechanism and then the analog signals it was sending. So you would maybe hit like, a button to open up a program, and it would then open up the phone and call someone. So it in itself was haunted. Like that's actually how I like looked it up. I'm like, phone seems haunted. And then I found a bunch of people are like, yeah, it'll like open up like a million apps and then close them. And they're like, yeah, you need to get that replaced before,
Yeah. Or at least get an exorcism.
Yeah, exactly. Before, you post, photos of your credit card. I don't know why you have photos of your credit card, but like, yeah.
Yeah, you could be doing crazy things, or that's just what the phone does. It understands that and wants to send it out. Yeah, there's been this like rise, or seemingly over the past like I want to say like 6 months or so, of these kind of like technology and social media horror stories that have really popped up. That like it is a perfect time for it, and especially with all the stuff that's going on now with Facebook and the news, it's like this is a good time to understand that, like, maybe you don't need to be totally tied to this device, that is so, like, intertwined with your life in general. Maybe it's okay to, like, put it down and have that, downtime without it. Like, I've read all these things of people saying, like, oh yeah, like, I took, like, a day off of my phone and it was, like, the most freeing experience I've ever had. And it's like, that's like a weird kind of anxiety that we've kind of, like, voluntarily given ourselves because we wanted a cool phone.
Yeah, and because we've like our brains have reshaped because of all the dopamine and whatnot. Like, yeah I definitely do. I try not to be on my phone. I have a rule like 30 minutes to an hour before bed, just so I can like, well, because I love to read books, and to like prepare my brainwaves for sleep and whatnot. So it'd be interesting. And I've heard of like there's a couple composers that have had like those like the bins where when people come in to hear like a full symphony, they actually have to like lock their phones away and they get like a little coat check pass. And then they have to sit in silence for like 30 minutes before they listen to the symphony. And it makes sense because you're like, if you're listening to something that's made like 300 years ago, back when recorded music didn't exist, let alone everything else, it's like, this is like the one time you get to hear something cool. Or not the one time, but like it's a full experience. And so there's no way to possibly reset your expectations to like back in the 1700s. But if you can, give yourself a little bit of meditation beforehand, it seems like the way to go. And I always kind of think stuff is cool, especially after having gone to the opera recently and been like, whew, that story could have been 30 minutes shorter. Like, but gorgeous, like set design and stuff, like all that good stuff. So.
Yeah, I feel like they do that with, like, whether it's certain screenings or performances, or even, like, comedy shows seem to be doing that as well. Like, it's good because, like, I've been to concerts where it's like, oh, it's just a sea of phones. Like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the point of that? Like, you're not watching what's going on. You're viewing it through a screen that you could do at home. Like, why don't you just do that instead? Yeah. It seems like an odd choice.
Yeah, especially when it's like, no one really cares that you saw, Metric, although Metric, it was a great show. So
yeah. So it's like, all right, good on you, but like, it's not like it's like, man, I'm so glad that Tracy filmed the entire performance of that concert. No one's gonna sit there and watch like an hour-long performance. Like, so what are you really doing? And you're not gonna watch that again.
Yeah.
So like, just put it down for a minute and enjoy it.
I know. Kind of need to bring back some of those, not to go back in time, like. With Goosebumps, we kind of need to bring back those nice cameras. It's like take a good few solid photos, excellent ones, and then forget about the rest.
Yeah, although like now both of us sound like ridiculously old. Where it's like, kids today and their phones, what do they think they're doing?
Yeah. I will say, so for Download and Die, I did I was looking at some of the stories R.L. Stine wrote, and there's one called Say Cheese and Die, which is about a haunted Polaroid camera. And so I kind of borrowed like the impetus for my story from that. So where it's like the photos would show you something different. So I think on the cover it's like a family having a barbecue, but then on the actual photo it's like a skeleton family. So but I remember at the time, even though it was like the 90s, I was kind of like, a Polaroid camera. I think they were having their like second renaissance though. But I was just laughing because I was just like, who uses Polaroids? Because we had those like instant disposable cameras, and that's disposable ones. So it was
back when that was cutting edge technology.
Like,
so I'm gonna take a bunch of pictures and then give it to someone else, and then in like 1 or 2 days I could come back and you'll have all of the pictures done. I'm like, whoa, it's like the speed of light over here. Like this is space age, NASA kind of stuff.
I know. Yeah, I was on yearbook staff, so it was just like, boy. Those 24-hour places, or same day, got to pay for that fancy Wolf membership or whatnot.
Nothing but the best for the yearbook.
Oh God, yeah.
But that's because I think Say Cheese and Die was like one of that has to be one of the earlier ones, I feel.
Yep.
And that's like one of those like quintessential Goosebump books when they think of it. I mean, but you do have an appearance. I don't know how much of a spoiler this is, but I mean, like the dummy whose name I can't remember off the top of my head
Slappy.
does make an appearance. Slappy. So yeah, he does show up. Like, and it's like, in hindsight, like, I feel like he was only in like one book, but like everyone is freaked out by a ventriloquist dummy. Like that's like, I feel like a universal fear that like no one likes those or clowns, and it's like that's it, you know? It's like, so yes, he made such an impression by the idea of a haunted ventriloquist dummy that like he's like the unofficial Goosebumps spokesperson.
Yeah, and
mascot, I guess.
That kind of goes back to the home intrusion. It's a Night of the Living Dummy was his first book, and then he had a couple, like Night of the Living Dummy 2, and then in the like kind of reboot books that R.L. Stine did, he came back. And it was like, it's because like I think one kid found it in like their theater like prop room, and then another one like it was like a gift from the parents. So it's like something's in your home, messing with your stuff, looks like a human, and you think moves like that's, and you know, that's like a scary, that's a bone chilling thing, is like if you see something and you're like, I didn't move that and no one's been in here. Like your mind instantly goes to like the most ridiculous thing instead of being like, oh, the window is open. Like, you know, you're like, who's in here? Who do I need to punch?
And not to mention the fact that like a ventriloquist dummy has like just cold, dead eyes that it's like, this is really creepy. Like, there's nothing natural about this. Like, it can't be good. Even if it has a painted-on smile, like, this thing is going to murder me in my sleep.
Yeah, yeah. Also, you have to put your hand into it. There's a lot of weird, like, type of body horror things going on there. Like, you know, vor type like weird side stuff. Yeah.
I'm part of the dummy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like it takes it fuses to your hand, you know, like all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Although that can't really be comfortable for the dummy because of like your hand placement for it. It's like, I know what I'll do to really freak him out. I'll squeeze my butt together. So his hand is going to be stuck up there. Like now, like both of us look ridiculous. Okay. Like there's no winner in this scenario.
I mean, if he could take one of your hands out with him, you know, like who won?
I mean, yeah. I guess so. Like, it's not a. I'm just picturing like, well now who's ridiculous? It's like you have a hand in your butt. Like that. Like how is that good? Like what are you gonna do with that? Like there's like have you thought this through at all?
Well, now I'm trying to remember if your hand actually goes up their butt, James. Like, I think there's some stuff on the back that you can do.
I mean, probably. I feel like it's like, it might as well be right there. Like, it's like, you know, when I don't know. You know, I'm not a ventriloquist. Nor do I play one on TV. That's just what I've learned from my years of watching ventriloquist acts, I guess. Like, does anyone, so many questions now too, but like that is still a skill that like, you know, that like vaudevillian kind of task of like, of ventriloquism that like, no, this is cool. We're gonna go on tour, and my whole thing is that I'm gonna talk to this dummy.
I mean, like, is it a skill? I feel like it's something people do to terrify other people, and based on like what your dummy looks like, depends on how close to horror or comedy you're going for. Like, when people make a dummy that looks exactly like them, nope, I'm out. Like,
What about where you stand then on like if people made like a Muppet that looks like them?
Muppets are different. They're like this, you know, soft, like puppets who teach you like literacy. You know, like they're not here to kill you.
Yeah, and that's like a fun novelty, but like like there's like no scenario where it's like, Kermit's totally gonna murder us. But like you look at, I don't know how like where a ventriloquist, like I'm gonna go and just like spend all this time on Wikipedia now reading about ventriloquist dummies. So like, why did we design them to look like this? Like, why do they look? It's that the uncanny valley there. They look too much like people that it just freaks us out a little bit, and it's like, this is not right. We don't like this.
Yeah,
take it back.
Yeah, please burn it. Oh, it won't burn. Even better. Great. Like.
Like why do we make an indestructible thing with no human soul?
Whose like, idea was this?
Like, why do we do this? There's so many questions now, but like this is the kind of stuff. These are the tangents. I had the same weird conversations when I spoke with Chris about Goosebumps. That we ended up talking about clowns for like 10 minutes. It's like, yeah, this is the kind of stuff that comes out when you get to talk about Goosebumps, because there's so many possibilities with this series, and everyone kind of remembers different stuff about it. Like this does make me want to like dig up the old books now. Like I don't know if I still even have them, or if they're still at my parents' house or something like that. But like, yeah, they're worth a reread in those kind of situations. Even if, yeah, look, they're made for like middle grade kind of readers, but like there's so many fond memories of them that, yeah, I want to go back and check them out again.
I'd be like a 7-year-old could read it if they can handle the nightmares. And they're like $4 still. Like you can go, and they sell them everywhere. So I went and got a couple of those, and yeah, I was like impressed with how cheap they were still, I guess. And then how the Goosebumps is still all embossed on the cover. You're like, yeah. Feel the horror.
There wasn't a collector's market for Goosebumps paperbacks?
I'm sure there is, but I'm not a part of it. I also like those books I like read them and like lent them out so often that they were heavily used. So for me, at least.
To put in perspective like how like ridiculous like the comic collector life was for me as a kid, like I got a Goosebumps book that was, I want to say it was like one with like it was a cuckoo clock on the cover of it. It was like into like maybe like the 20s or something like that. And it was like misprinted. Like there were like pages like in the wrong like spot, or just like the whole thing was just like off. Like it was like it like did not come through the printing press correctly. And I, being a dopey kid, was like, this is going to be worth money one day. Like, it's a misprinted Goosebumps book. It's probably a huge market. And I'm like, why? Like, no. Like, I'm looking back, no, it was just a screwed up book. Like, I should have taken it back and got my money back, because I got a new one. Like, I don't know why, I thought that, thinking like, oh no, I know, misprints and stuff like that. That's where the money is.
Was the misprint just like a bunch of like runes and symbols in the shape of like a demon? Because that would have been rad.
Yeah, now in hindsight, if I had gotten that,
it was
like, just recite, Claudiu Verata Nictum, and then you're all set. That's the new story. Yeah. It's like, but no, it was just like a printing error.
Yeah. And, now I'm gonna go on eBay and look up, what was it, Cuckoo Clock of Doom or something, that book?
Yeah. Yeah, let me know if there's misprinting ones.
I'm gonna let you know later what you're missing out on.
Yeah, it'll be like finding a rare Beanie Baby, and I'll be able to cash in and just live that high life.
And then until your kids accidentally play with it. So.
Yeah, then no, that's a collector's item. So don't read. This book is not for reading.
These are Daddy's play toys, and he doesn't play with them.
Yeah. No, I do have some of those toys from when I was a kid, and then I showed them one that was the AT-AT walker from Star Wars. And my kid took it and broke the leg off of one of the drivers. So I was like, yeah, well, now we're not going to play with this anymore. Like, now that stays in here.
My step-grandma gave me these special holiday Barbies every year. So these were like $40 or $50 Barbies. They came in like a triple wide box and had like big gowns. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but you Google holiday Barbies. Look on the internet. And I remember the first one I think I opened up and gave to my mom because it was like a wedding one, and she had just gotten remarried. So it was like, this is for you, let me re-gift this thing. But I remember she gave them to me, and I didn't like dolls. I was more of a playing with dinosaurs / models of human organs that my grandma gave me because she was a doctor. Like she gave me like a skull that pulled apart and like the heart, so I could like play. Anyway, so and dolls like gave me nightmares though. Again, tiny people, I guess, like. So I actually, aside from that first one that I gave my mom, I kept all my holiday Barbies in their plastic prisons and like stacked them in a corner facing the wall. So I didn't even have to see them. My parents, I think my step-grandma finally got the memo like 6 years in, because I was just, having none of it.
Now that you've built a fort of Barbie dolls to never look at.
Yeah. It was just like, I was like, just because I'm a girl doesn't mean I like Barbies. In fact, they terrify me. Like, yeah. Just, oof.
Understandable.
Yeah.
All right, so look, on that note, this is Jen. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad. This is exactly the kind of stuff I want from the show. Yes, we veer into other stuff, and we're not going to sit here and just talk solely about the comic the entire time. And I want nothing but this kind of talk. So very much, very very happy to have these kind of conversations with people like you. It's great. To kind of wrap up, the first issue of Goosebumps Download and Die is available now, so you can get it at your local comic shop. You can get it at Comixology. Otherwise, the best places to find you online, what would they be?
I am the Jenya on social media, TheJenya. It's kind of like my name in Yiddish, so.
Cool. So we'll link that up, and also links to buy the first issue. As well, you can get a Kindle, a Comixology, wherever finer books are sold. But I've read the first issue. It's really it's good stuff. It's fun, all ages kind of stuff. But again, it works for adults. It works for kids. Well worth checking out. And again, timely because of our strange addiction to mobile phones now. It's very very curious how all this is going to play out. The first of a 3-issue run, so I'm excited. But yeah, Jen, thank you again for chatting with me here. This was a lot of fun. But yeah, that's it then for this episode of Funny Book Splatter. I have been James Ferguson with my guest, Jen Vaughn. You've been listening to Funny Book Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorTalk.com. We've been bringing you the best in horror since 2002. In addition to comics, we cover movies, TV shows, books, and video games. We've got news, reviews, guest features, interviews, unboxing videos, and much more. Be sure to sign up to Steve's Deals newsletter to increase your horror collection without breaking the bank. Check us out at HorrorTalk.com and at HorrorTalk on Twitter.